This afternoon, we have 3 speakers. The first speaker is going to talk to us about how to win in this world as business leaders. He's an esteemed scholar at Harvard Business School and is the author of Competing in the AI Age. Please help me welcome Professor Karim Lakhani.
Thank you so much. I was looking at the agenda and I noticed that this is actually a Harvard conference that happens to be in New York because all the keynotes are Harvard affiliated, but real pleasure to be here with you. So I'm going to walk you through a thesis about technology and organizations and strategy and why it's important that you all as technologists realize the key role you have to play in this age of AI that we're in, and the importance of you to both understand the business context and also the technology context. So that's the sort of overall agenda that I have for you. And to sort of get us ready for this age of AI, I'm going to show you a few videos from 1992. How many of you were in your teenage years or above in 1992? Just raise your hand. Okay, so there's a bunch of people that, all right, okay. I always find myself to be getting older and older with my students, and so they're always the same age, and I am where I am. So anyway, we're gonna watch these videos. As you watch the videos, keep track of what they got right and what they got wrong, okay? 1992.
Have you ever borrowed a book from thousands of miles away? Across the country?
Just ahead, take next exit.
Without stopping for directions?
Route 101.
Or sent someone a fax? From the beach? You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T. Have you ever paid a toll without slowing down? Bought concert tickets from a cash machine? Or tucked your baby in from a phone booth? You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T. Have you ever opened doors?
On hold.
With the sound of your voice? Your card, please. Carried your medical history in your wallet. Your wife's gonna be just fine.
So this is where we stand on the atrium.
Or attended a meeting.
I really like what you guys have been doing, but
in your bare feet.
I may have a few other ideas.
You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T.
So what do you guys think? Right, pretty good, right? I mean, you gotta love their marketing department. They nailed the future that they invented 30 years ago, right? Has come true to the point. The form looks weird, there's no mobile phones because AT&T was still in the landline business. They didn't imagine a mobile phone business yet. But the function has been nailed to a T. What they got wrong, of course, was that none of this was brought to us by AT&T, right? None of this. And if you sort of think about it again, as a scholar of business, I'm like, well, these were Sunday afternoon commercials, right? So Sunday morning commercials in the high-end shows in the 3 networks that we used to have. There were only 3 channels on TV, right? Maybe 4, right? And so these were high-priced. Tom Selleck, Magnum PI, you guys might remember him, was the narrator. So I'm sure the board saw this commercial, right? I'm sure all the senior executives saw these commercials, said, yeah, that's our future. But the company wasn't able to fulfill on it. Instead, the companies that brought the future were companies that we all know, right? You sort of imagine all these organizations and what they've been able to do. And if you go on YouTube and you search, there's about 20 minutes worth of these videos. Every single thing, from your smartwatch, right, to digital assistants, all that was perfectly predicted. Right? We all wish we had these types of oracles in our companies that could tell us what the future was going to be. Because the problem is not your imagination or the technology can do. The problem is organizational, unfortunately. Right? It's how we organize ourselves to get these things done. We can have amazing imaginations, but if we're not set up properly in our organizations, none of this will come true, and that's what happened with AT&T. Of course, as you look at these companies, there are three things that stand out, right? They're digital first, they're AI first, right? And they're all platforms, right? They do this in the model of ecosystems, right? They're set up themselves as ecosystems, and that's what they deliver, right? So no one company is fully vertically integrated to offer all these things. They're set up as ecosystems and how they deliver. And so as we think about what's ahead for us, you want to start thinking about, like, where in the future is this happening today? Where is this future happening today? And I want to sort of first show you the quote from one of my favorite authors, William Gibson. And he has famously said, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. Okay? So there's pockets of the future existing today where you as technologists, as managers, as leaders can go to, examine the future, see what's happening, and then bring it back to your organizations, right? Same kind of a forecasting exercise that the AT&T commercials did. And so as we sort of think about AI and this crazy world of AI, we've been through several eras of this. And all of you, when you were doing your graduate degrees, your undergraduate degrees, you sort of have been exposed to this, right? We started from this world of cybernetics to trained experts to where this became real for many of us, which was sort of good learners, right? All of you have been in this world of good learners. And these good learners enabled this AI future that we're now living in. And now the fourth wave, of course, is the generative wave that we're sort of living in. And you also know that the driver for this has been sort of this breakthroughs in both data growth, compute power, and sort of the advances in how we think about how we build our machine learning models and put them together. And what's amazing to me is sort of this application of this to a range of industries. So these slides actually come from my colleague, Armin McCrachin. He's there on the big screen. So if somebody can take a photo of him, I can then send it to him that he's on the big screen. That'd be great. Anyway, so he's there on the big screen, and he works at Flagship Pioneering, where I spend some time. And our job at Flagship Pioneering is to invent new life sciences companies. And so the diffusion models that exist, we're applying it to protein engineering, inventing brand new proteins that have not existed before. Okay? So clear, the basic copy, not copy paste. I'm a business school professor, so I'm going to sort of generalize, right? Taking the techniques from one side, applying it over to the other side, right? Same thing on reinforcement learning, how that allows you to explore a vast chemical space, matters a ton in life sciences. And then similarly, of course, large language models. And the cute things you can do with ChatGPT, you can now also do that to actually explore molecular nutrition as an example. So this is the exciting part that we're living in. And I want us to sort of, again, do a little bit of time travel together, just so we understand what is this era that we're living in. Like, all these crazy things are happening simultaneously. And so most of you can think back 20 years, right? The AOL Netscape merger was the biggest, hottest deal in the time, in the world of business. Okay? Now just do this thought experiment. Think back 20 years. Imagine where you were, okay? And tell your younger self how this world is going to unfold, okay? And certainly, you could look at the charts, the top firms by market capitalization, and you would see, oh, there's a familiar name, Microsoft. At the top, $200 billion in value, right? IBM, number 10, $140 billion in value. And then there's like a conglomerate like GE. I started my career at GE, right, in 1993. I'm gutted that the company is no longer relevant in terms of what they were in the 90s and 2000s. Right? I never imagined that GE would be irrelevant, but they have disappeared off the map, right? Oil and gas, retail, healthcare, so on and so forth. And then if you look at the companies today that are living in the future now, it's quite remarkable, right? Right? All the usual suspects that you would not imagine: Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, NVIDIA now, right? Meta, Tesla, TSMC, all of them are in the digital AI age. So we are seeing this value in the marketplace. The people down in Lower Manhattan also see this as being really important, right, and create these valuations. The consumers also think of this as really important. And what's important to note is that these are mostly consumer tech companies, right? So many of your customers in their private lives are already living in the AI future. And then they encounter your companies, a bank or insurance company, and they go, what are you guys doing? It's terrible. My experience is terrible. I get magical things from Amazon and Apple and Netflix, right? And you asking me to fax some things? You're asking me to send you signature cards? Really? Right? And so that's the juxtaposition that we have. And the thing to sort of also think about is in '03, if you went back to your younger self and said there'll be companies worth trillions of dollars, that would seem unimaginable. That many of these firms serve billions of users effortlessly, that would also be unbelievable. And then also, you would say, we would have been in lockdowns for 2 years. We were in a global pandemic. The world was shut down. We were trapped in our basements, in our attics, okay? Yet, we magically kept working. And businesses went on, okay? That's the science fiction part of it, and that's why William Gibson can help us. And a way to think about why this has happened is a fantastic book that I recommend to you called The Exponential Age. Azim Azhar has written this great book, and this book basically argues that there's a set of technologies, including AI, that grow exponentially, okay? And with them is a set of organizations that can also grow exponentially. But the rest of us grow linearly, right? Now you guys are kind of mathy, you understand math, right? When there's a linear function and an exponential function, right, the gap increases, right? And that's the gap that many of us in traditional organizations face. I'm part of an institute that's 9 months old, 11 months old, inside of a 110-year organization, inside of the oldest corporation in the Western Hemisphere, Harvard University, right? We grow linearly, right? Exponential is not in our language, right? But everybody else around us is growing exponentially, and we've got to figure out what we do. So this challenge is being faced by everybody around us. And so now let's put this together in this notion of the age of AI. What does this mean for us? What does this age of AI really mean? And the first thing I want to sort of show you is things that you're aware of. You sort of hear this all the time, all the hype around AI. I want to give you an economic lens around this hype. So whenever you see excitement in the press, in stock market and so forth, you want to say like, what's going on? And certainly with AI, two things are going on simultaneously. The first thing is that people are recasting all their problems as AI problems. Medicine is now an AI problem. Driving is an AI problem. Deliveries are an AI problem, right? Everything's now being recast in terms of AI. The same thing happened in the era of electricity. So 100 years ago, electricity everything was being recast as an electrical problem, right? That's why we have automatic sliding doors. Doors were mechanical, right? And then we said, oh, the cost of electricity has dropped radically. Let's imagine sliding doors. I had this great experience with my daughter. We were up visiting my mom in Toronto. She has a 20-year-old Camry in her garage, right? And we get in the car. I'm driving it, and my daughter is trying to find the button to get the window to go up and down. And I'm like, you gotta turn the crank, right? It's a mechanical solution, not an electrical solution. The same thing is happening with AI. We're recasting everything as an AI problem. The second thing you all know, of course, is that the cost of innovating with AI has dropped like a rock. So when people recast everything as AI and the cost to innovate has dropped like a rock, you see this massive entry. You see this massive interest. Okay? That's why we see these massive valuations, right? People are recasting everything as AI, and we can innovate like crazy with AI as well. All right? And of course, people always want definitions. I prefer the one from Stanford. Strong AI is something that is fully autonomous robots doing their own thing. We're not there yet. Weak AI is things that we all do today, which is doing things that humans once did, right? And it's the application of weak AI, and I would put generative AI in the same category of weak AI, right, to all the human problems that we have is what's causing all the excitement. So to help understand this, I wrote a book with my great friend Marco Ianciti, who's also a Harvard professor, and we thought about how AI is actually changing both business models and operating models. Okay? So a business model is the reasons why customers come to you, or a company strategy. How you create value, why customers want to transact with you, and then how you make money from it, the value capture. Value creation and value capture are key portions in a business. Okay? But then that's not enough. That's a strategy. You need an operating model to be able to deliver this value. And in an operating model, we think about scale, how you serve many customers, scope, how you offer them many different things, and then how you keep learning. And it's a systematic application of AI and digital to both a business model and operating model is what's making the difference. Okay? And so let me give you some cute examples. One comes from China. There's going to be two examples from China. This is from JD Digits. They were asked by the Chinese government to take their promise and help the farmers and the agriculture sector in China. They looked around. They said, oh, there are 700 million pigs being raised all over China. Right? Maybe we can offer insurance for the pig farmers. Very quickly, they realized that they would need a massive organization of people counting all the pigs, making sure that they were the right pigs, tagging them, and so on and so forth, right? A massive thing. They said, well, no, let's not do this. Let's figure out something different, right? So they threw AI and digital at the problem. They said, okay, we'll do facial recognition for pigs. Apparently it works. And also I met the person behind this, for chickens too. You can do facial recognition for chickens as well. So they did facial recognition, and they also built the chicken solution as well. Facial recognition for chickens, for pigs. They then basically camerified the entire farm, right? And then now all of a sudden, they had a solution that not only identified each pig, could detect its health, its feeding, its capability, and so on and so forth, right? And they said, we're not just going to offer insurance, we can do that, but we can also connect to a platform, right? We can now bring in feed, veterinary services, and the final fatal stage of becoming bacon as well, right? All of that is a new business. It's not a traditional insurance company. It's an AI-based company at its core. The second thing I want to sort of highlight to you is a paper that came out of my lab, in JAMA Oncology, which I think is a good journal. And we showed that we could build a radiation therapy treatment planning algorithm for radiation oncologists using crowdsourcing, okay, for $50,000 in 8 weeks. And this outperformed all the commercial applications, but also importantly, was as good as average Harvard-trained radiation oncologist. Now, the thing to note is that I'm one of the last authors in the paper, which means like I'm a big shot, apparently. The thing to note is I lasted biology in 10th grade. I got a C, right? And I'm like, this biology, chemistry, I don't get it. I'm going to go more towards mechanical and electrical engineering and that kind of stuff, right? So here's somebody who basically failed at biology, right? Never understood it, writing a paper in JAMA Oncology, right? One of the leading cancer journals in the world, talking about this thing, right? The cost to innovate with AI has dropped. JD Digits shows us with the pigs, we reframe problems with AI, right? The JAMA Oncology paper shows you we can now at a low cost innovate with this technology. And so as we imagine this, these are 2-point solutions. I want us to now think about what does an AI-first company look like, and why is it that you should understand this future and what it means for your jobs and your roles. So for me, the best example is what has again happened in China and the Ant Group. So this company is crazy, okay? Ant Group spins off as an escrow payment service, basically PayPal for Alibaba, okay? And then you can see this hockey stick growth, okay? In 2019, when we spent some time with them and tried to understand them, they had 1.2 billion users, okay? 1.2 billion users, but only 10,000 employees. Let me repeat, 1.2 billion users and 10,000 employees. This is a totally different company than we're used to seeing in this part of the world, okay? Just imagine everything that has to be done to serve 1.2 billion users at scale, real time, right? And to be able to build that organization. Importantly, they have some cool metrics. One of my favorite metrics is 310, right? 3 minutes for you to apply for any product on their mobile app. 1 minute for approval, 0 human intervention. 310. Okay, 310. So look, I'm an immigrant to the US. I grew up in Canada. I've had the same bank. They've been bought several times. My bank in the US, which is now a major bank, also has 310. It's like 3 minutes, like 3 months to apply. It takes you 3 months, right? 1 month for approval, right? And 0 AI and digital, okay? Right? And so, but those of you that are in the guts of these organizations, you know how difficult it would be to build this kind of a system, right, with such few people. And what we see in our view is that we have to imagine them in a very different context. We have to imagine them in terms of their business model and their operating model. And when you look at their app is super weird, like to our standards here in the US, right? It's an all-encompassing super app, right? Their strategy is not to be a fintech company or a bank, right? They say we're a fin life company. What they care about is wherever you're going to have a transaction, we're going to be there. We're going to mediate that transaction. Because we want to be in the flow of the transactions, in the flow of data, compared to many financial services companies that are about the stock of their data, right? They're about the stock of the money. They're in the flow of the money. And when you start thinking the flow of money, then your idea to build, for example, the DD integration into the app makes sense, right? Even though the ROI to you would be very, very little, because I'm capturing data about my consumers, right? This is worth the investment for me to create all of these different things along the way as well. So this FinLife is their strategy, but as we unpack it, what we see is that there are 3 dimensions of value that they're going after, right? There's a product value, which is like how good the app is, all right? How good is the app? What does it do? Then there's the network value. How well does the product sit within an ecosystem, right? And are there network effects? And the third dimension is the learning value. As I observe the consumers doing all these interactions, what can I learn from that as well? So typically, most of us in companies have focused on the left-hand side, the fit and finish of the product, how good is the experience. And we haven't thought about, could the value also increase because it's in an ecosystem? And could the value also increase because we have data? These guys have figured out how to do that, right? That's how they think about value creation for themselves. And when we think about value capture in the operating model, this is where it gets super interesting. One thing we see is that their architecture looks very different, right? On the left-hand side are architectures of the companies that we have here, right? I could also put HBS on here too. We have 7 different IT groups for an organization that serves basically 50,000 people a year, okay? So siloed architectures, siloed data, right? If you guys want access to data, you're making phone calls, people are sending you floppy disks, right? And you're in meetings, wrangling data across the enterprise, okay? Anybody experience that? Very few of you? Wow. Or you just don't want to tell us? Okay, all right. So this is the world on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side are the worlds of the AI first company, data across the enterprise, right? The famous Bezos memo of API access to the data and to the services. But the architecture looks different, the capabilities look different, and the technology assets look different as well. And then the AI is then at the core of their business. Digital is at the core. It's not a sideshow. It's not in the basement. It's what drives the business. When I see executives at HBS, I often say, look, nothing in your company happens without software and data. Nothing, right? Nothing. It could be crappy data, crappy software, and you have a lot of patches, but you have to realize that everybody's now a software and a data company. And you better get your act together to understand how this works so that you can be more competitive. And so when we look at something like this, what we see is that when you put data, technology, and AI at the center of the firm, you are now rethinking bottlenecks. You're now rethinking processes, and that's very important. And I love the Satya Nadella quote, pre-ChatGPT everything, right? AI is a new runtime that's going to shape all that we do. And of course, you know this logic. Underneath Ant, right, is a logic of as you get more usage, you get more data. As you get more data, you build better algorithms. As you build better algorithms, you get better services. And that's the flywheel that everybody wants to uncover for them. But the key thing that I would sort of say, and this is why this is so cool for this to be happening at Domino, at Rev4, is that what we see is that many of these companies, including Ant, right, industrialize the data science process, right? In many organizations, including ours at HBS, right, data science is a craft, right? We create fine-grained, very fragile models, right? And maybe a dashboard, right? And that's what everybody's happy with, right? What these guys do is they industrialize the process. They invest a ton in the data pipeline, right? They have algos, they have infrastructure, they have an experimentation platform. And this is the beating heart of their system. So we call this an AI factory. You industrialize the process. Just as the Industrial Revolution moved us out of craft making to the current world that we live in, right? The same thing is happening with data science as well. Now, what does an AI factory do? Of course, an AI factory does three things, you know this: predictions, pattern recognition, and process automation, right? That's what the AI factory does. That's the role of the AI factory. And again, the thing to note here is these are generic things that happen in any organization. If you think about your organization, think about all the predictions that are happening all the time in your organization, right? Should we hire this person or not? Should we run the sales promotion or not? Should we change the pricing or not, right? Those are all predictions being made, right? Same thing with pattern recognition, same thing with processes as well. And that's what the AI factory does and does it really well. And of course, this becomes the core of your operating model. Now, as we think about operating models have been around for a long time, of course, right? We learned about scale, scope, and learning through Ford and Sears and Toyota. And of course, what they did, which was so great, is that they were able to get to market fast, right? But they were set up as silos. And silos worked really well. Silos enable us to get value very quickly. But then you get basically this concave curve, right? Where after a certain amount of time, you just get stuck. Right? There's just inertia, right? Complexity of the organization, administrative costs, all that stuff basically slows down the value you can create or deliver for your clients. And then when we think about companies at the bottom of this screen, what you see is that they're focused in on two major stories, right? One is network effects, right? An ecosystem play, okay? To increase the value as more and more customers join on board. But also importantly, and this is why they were so successful, is because they had all of this data, is you can now sharpen the value curve with AI, okay? So you basically now have a clash of a convex curve with a concave curve, right? And you know what that looks like, right? And so as we imagine this, the AI and data remove the traditional constraints that we have on scale, scope, and learning, right? Zero marginal costs for customer interactions. Okay? Aggregation across markets for increasing scope, and then constant learning. And then this basically results in a very interesting dynamic, right? You have digital businesses that can scale exponentially, right? And they are competing with traditional product businesses that grow and peter out after a while, okay? And there's many examples of this in our economy, okay, over and over again. And what this leads to is what we call this collision. Right? There's a collision when these curves intersect. And we've seen this battle before in the software stack, you know, in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, and then in mobile, internet, right, blah, 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 right? Now we're seeing it across many industries at the same time. By the way, this is also the world we lived in from 2020 to the last year, right? Because we had an exponential disease process called COVID and fixed hospital capacity. Nobody knew how to work with an exponential disease process. Now we do. I think many of us have forgotten now, but that's the reality, right? But these dynamics are being replicated in the world of business today. We see this, you know, when you implement this, you see results like Moderna. So Moderna, as a company that I know, is part of the flagship pioneering ecosystem. Moderna was able to launch the vaccine with an 800-person company in a matter of months. The actual time needed to create the vaccine itself on their digital studio was 4 hours. The rest was all testing and safety, okay? And it was their investments in AI and digital that enabled them to come to market so fast and deliver billions of doses, okay? My favorite example these days comes from my teenage daughter, Shein. Anybody know Shein? Okay, this company is crazy, right? What Tesla is for cars, what Moderna is for pharma, Shein is for fast fashion. And what they've done is they've taken all these principles from the purely digital world and applied them to atoms, to clothing, okay? So the numbers are kind of stunning, okay? If you think about new designs per year, 1 to 2 million designs per year, about 4,000 new designs per day get launched on Shein. Okay, look, lots of problems with environment and so on and so forth. We're gonna block that, right? We're gonna come back to that about the ethics around this at the end. I just wanna let you know what is possible, right? What the art of the possible is here, okay? So 4,000 new SKUs per day get launched on their product platform. Time from design to product, 3 to 5 days, okay, compared to what happens at Zara, Uniqlo, H&M, okay? Minimum order size, less than 100, right? Versus 10,000 and up in the large companies. It's crazy, it's crazy. What have they done? They've built a platform, right? They have a platform of 6,000 small and medium-sized factories in China, right? And then they connect them to 74 million active shoppers, 13 million of them are in the US. My daughters run them. I'm now a shopper as well on Shein. It's quite incredible. And what you see is they can run some very interesting low-cost ways to determine market signals. And once they get the market signal, they can go and massively increase the order size that they need, okay? So the data-driven coordination, matching, they run a reverse auction at the back end when they know the designs are hot, right, are cool. On the right-hand side, all digital marketing, social media, community-based stuff going on. So again, network effects and learning effects, what we talked about before, in the pure tech players are now being done in the world of atoms, okay? And what you see is they've done basically a virtual software and data integration with their manufacturing partners. They provide the entire software stack, right? And then they can start to build their businesses. So Shein is another great example of what this means for us. Now, of course, look, AI-first companies are facing a lot of backlash, lots of problems out there, okay? And we're gonna be living in this world of love and hate at the same time around these systems. But that doesn't also mean that the incumbent firms have not faced problems as well. So as we enter this era and start to live in this age of AI, there are going to be some serious issues that we actually have to deal with, right? And you know, the hardest chapter that we wrote in our book was this one, this new ethics of digital scale, scope, and learning. Because I have to tell you, you as technologists now also need to become ethicists. That's just the answer, right? We can't have the ethics of AI be part of the Office for General Counsel, right, or sitting somewhere else. Just like what we had to do with quality had to be embedded inside of Toyota. There was no quality department. It was part of the process. Just as we've sort of seen in terms of cybersecurity, programming had to change. My view is that data scientists and AI folks have to now be really thinking about ethics. So getting up to speed on those topics are going to be really important for you, okay? And you have to drive the conversation as much as your business leaders are going to be driving the conversation. Because society is going to hold that, you know, already you're sort of saying, let's ban ChatGPT, let's do a moratorium on AI, and so on and so forth, right? Those questions will come to you. Your kids, your neighbors are saying, I hear you're building AI systems. What have you thought about ethics or not along the way as well? And there's lots of questions, security, privacy, bias. You've heard of all of these things. And it's really important for you guys to not just sort of understand them, but think about the consequences of the systems you're building and what it implies for their business. One of my colleagues at HBS, Seth Neal, he said he's trustworthy AI computing. In his job talk to our group when he was applying for a job a few years ago, he said close to 50% of US organizations today are violating some US law because their algorithms are biased. They just don't know it yet, right? And so that's just a risk that the board will freak out about. And you don't want to wait till you launch their product and go, oh crap, our training was biased. right? Our data was biased, it was not representative, and so on and so forth. Because we as statisticians and data scientists think about fairness on average. Yeah, my system is fair on average, but the law says fair to the person, right? Heterogeneous treatment effects matter. Individual level treatment effects will matter as you build your systems. So again, these are things that you have to really build in. And if you don't pay attention to this, nasty things can happen. So Ant Group was meant to be one of the largest IPOs in the history of IPOs, and then Xi Jinping said, right? Because Jack Ma said, hey, regulators, you guys don't know what you're talking about, we know better, and then, I think he's now living in Japan. And the whole Alibaba infrastructure has been declawed in many ways, okay? So ethics will matter a ton. And so many of you are leading this journey inside of organizations, and I know it's not easy. It's a lot of frustration. I've been running a digital transformation task force a few years ago, and I quickly realized that I don't do renovations. It's really hard. So I gave that to somebody else and decided to build a new institute. But it's really hard. It's really hard to drive change inside of organizations, but that's what we have to do. And it's your job to be able to do it. Now, people talk about transformation a lot, and it feels kind of weighty, okay? So there's a common understanding there's thorough or dramatic change in form or appearance. There's a biology example, right? Metamorphosis. There is physics, right? A nuclear process. I like the mathematical definition, right? Change the form, but keep the underlying relationships the same. That's what I think transformation is for all of us, right? Like, we're gonna keep the essence of your companies and its purpose and its mission, but we're gonna just change how it's done, okay? And this has become a priority in a range of organizations. And what I want to show to you is that Marco, my colleague, has done a bunch of great studies in collaboration with Microsoft to understand, is there a difference in companies when they go on these transformation journeys with digital and with AI? So the data set is about 120, 140 large-scale public companies. And then we compare them to these digital natives, and he's been able to build a measure of leaders and laggards and also correlate this to performance. And so the truth is that we find, and we've done all the economic tricks to get the causality error right. What we find is that two things matter the most: technological architecture and your innovation processes and your business processes. These two are causally related to both returns in the market and enterprise value growth as well. And what Marco has seen is the following, right? The laggards, right, look like this inside the technological architecture, okay? Looks familiar, right? I think everybody will see their companies inside of here, okay? The laggards look like this, okay? And the leaders look like this, systematically, okay? And there's a way, and what we've seen in his work is that, remember, our sample are large public companies in those four sectors. What they've seen is that it's possible to do the transformation if you focus both on the architecture and the process. And let me give you a concrete analogy of what this means. What this means is, we're in Manhattan, and then my favorite city in the world, Boston. I'm still gutted about the Celtics, but we'll talk about that later. This is the street map of downtown Boston, and then of course you see Manhattan here. Boston looks crazy. This comes from an economic geography paper where somebody measures street entropy. So the graphics on the bottom are measuring the entropy of the streets, okay? And so in this crowd, you guys understand entropy and how it would be measured? Like, it's so great, right? Like, anyway, it's awesome. So what happened? Concrete and asphalt get invented in the 1800s. What did Boston do? Great, we have all these cow paths. We're gonna pour concrete down our cow paths. And then you have the mess that the city of Boston is. Even with GPS, you're lost, okay? Manhattan, Paris, Sao Paulo, Philadelphia said, we're gonna build a grid system. Grid systems is more rational, right? What I see most incumbent companies do is Boston. They pour digital and AI asphalt, and concrete over the terrible processes that were invented 100 years ago. Right? Again, remember, I come from an organization that's the oldest corporation in the Western Hemisphere. I'm sure we have processes that got invented in the 1800s and the 1700s that are still being used because we haven't rethought them at all. Okay? So, the problem is we don't change processes. And I think your job as leaders in AI practices, in data science practices, in machine learning processes, is to question the process. Don't make the old processes better. You only get incremental benefits. You have to reimagine the processes, right? And so the concrete way to think about that is that the former head of Moderna's digital enterprise, Marcello Damiani, he was there for 7 years. He just has made a bunch of money now and is kite flying somewhere. He was the chief digital officer and the chief process excellence officer. Okay? Data scientists, ML engineers, AI scientists have to be engaged in process. Question the process. Force your business leaders to rethink the process. Okay? So now let's talk about ChatGPT, because that's the de rigueur thing these days to close this all off for us. And I have 5 minutes. I'm going to do a super fast job at this. My view of ChatGPT is it is a shock to the cost of cognition and creativity. Okay? And again, as an economist, I'm asking these questions, right? As a management scholar, I'm asking, what happens when the cost and price of knowledge work drops and quality also increases? Okay? So you can imagine a normal distribution of skills in any kind of a job, right? Many of us see ourselves on the right tail of the distribution, right? And the question is, when these generative models come around, what is going to be their impact? How is it going to impact the distribution? Most of us in the scholarly fields felt that the left tail would be hurt the most. That the left tail would be hurt the most. But I'm revising that assumption, okay? What I expect to happen is that there'll be a shift to the right of the distribution, and the distribution will also narrow, okay? And possibly the left tail will benefit a ton more than the right tail, okay? We're doing a bunch of A/B testing of this in several organizations to get at that, and we're seeing this effect come through. The left tail is getting better. So a couple quick examples, right? You think about nurse practitioners. You think about paralegals. With ChatGPT and generative AI, all of a sudden, right, you will be able to be as good as the physicians and have more empathy. You probably all saw that paper that showed that ChatGPT was better in medical diagnostics and also empathy compared to your average doctor. Okay? So now we can have nurse practitioners do this work for us. More generally, what we anticipate is 3 effects happening in the labor market: a replacement effect, an augmentation effect, and a transformation effect. Okay? And that's, I think, something to sort of keep your attention to. And I just want to sort of put this era in a historical setting. Many of you will remember this logo. This is the browser logo for Mosaic, right? Mosaic came out, and there's a straight line from Mosaic being founded to Google and Baidu being founded as well, 4 or 5 years later, right? What did Mosaic do? It lowered the cost of information transmission, such that the coffee pot at Oxford University could have global distribution. That was the first use case for the web. It was that kind of cute, okay? But we didn't anticipate what this would do to the rest of the economy, right? You think about Napster. How many of you still have your illegal music stored? I think all of mine is some deep Amazon storage, right? What did Napster do? Napster lowered the cost of music distribution and enabled unbundling of the album. What came out of it? iTunes and Spotify, okay? iPhone, right? What did iPhone do? iPhone basically lowered the cost of software development. Now, anybody could write an app, right? And it gave us TikTok, right? And the question for us collectively is, with OpenAI, with generative AI, right, what happens when the cost of creativity, of cognition drops to 0? What will come out, right? And that's, I think, a key factor for us to be thinking about. And to summarize for ourselves, what I want to sort of show you is that for you all today, you want to think about generative AI as your co-pilot, right? It's your RA that is extremely patient, knows everything, can take left turns, right turns on the fly, doesn't get tired, doesn't complain, doesn't need food, okay, right? Is patient with you, right? My RAs aren't that way. They get mad at me very quickly when I change my mind about research, right? But you have to be the captain. You have to look after his hallucinations, his weird left turns and right turns. And today, you can start to use these tools today in your jobs, right? The augmentation story is here today, right? But you need to say, I'm the captain, I've got this brilliant co-pilot with me, but the co-pilot can go crazy sometimes. And it's my job to make sure that they don't crash the plane, okay? Now, one of my postdoctoral fellows for Bizzo Dell'Acqua has shown that smart people with smart AI fall asleep at the wheel, okay? They take the hallucinations at face value. Smart people with smart AI do worse. Don't do that. Okay, and the other thing I'm gonna say is reimagine the possibilities. When the internet came about, there was Barnes & Noble and Borders. They basically created a world where e-commerce was an augmentation on their business. Amazon came in and reimagined its business with the internet. And this is a choice that many of you in your organizations will face. Are we gonna do augmentation, add this nice, cool stuff, or are we gonna fundamentally rethink what we do along the way? Okay, I'm out of time. I was gonna tell you a little bit about our institute. I'm not gonna do any of that. All I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go through all these slides. I'm gonna show you, we've got amazing labs, amazing people working on research. We're looking to collaborate with industry folks at our institute. I'm gonna share with you 2 QR codes, okay? One's our mailing list, right? You can join our mailing list. We're trying to build an open platform for people interested in these topics, okay, on the left-hand side. And if you're interested in a generative AI, we actually have a generative AI Discord being set up, and our team over the summer and over the fall will be offering a ton of programming for free. We're democratizing Harvard as well, finally, right? And so you can participate with that as well. And then finally, you guys have the shots of this. I'm happy to send you the slides. My contact information is here. Please stay in touch. And I'm very thankful for your attention today. Good luck with all of this.